Hello, and welcome to the U.S. History Underground. I'm Mr. Zagari, and I'm joined by my podcasting partner, Mr. O'Hagan. How are we doing today, Mr. O?
Excited to be here, Zags. We have a special day today. And in addition to that topic we're going to do, we're on the cusp of a really special celebration.
We sure are. As of today's recording, we are only weeks away from 2026, and that will kick off a national year-long celebration commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
America 250 is the title that's been adopted for that semi-quincentennial or 250th year celebration. Take a look at the show notes when you're done here for some great links to get you ready for that year-long celebration. Zags, anyone looking at the title of this podcast might be a bit confused by our focus on the Declaration of Independence to start off, but in truth, the timing couldn't be better.
No, it couldn't, Mr. O, because today on the podcast, it's Lincoln, Greeley, and Gettysburg. Okay, so Lincoln might be obvious, but let's clarify the other two names we dropped. Our focus today is going to be on two vital primary sources that every student of the American Civil War should know: Lincoln's letter to Horace Greeley and the Gettysburg Address. Let's start with the letter to Greeley and see if we can make sense of this underlying connection to the Declaration and Lincoln. Mr. O, can you provide us some context to start things off?
Certainly, Zags. So it's late August of 1862. The Civil War has been underway for over a year. And from the outset of the war, Lincoln proclaimed the war's goal to be the reunion of the nation. He said little about slavery for fear of alienating border states like Missouri and Kentucky and Maryland and even Delaware. Lincoln was also concerned about Northern Democrats, who generally oppose fighting the war to free the enslaved people, but whose support Lincoln needed. And he struggled to find a general in whom he could place his full trust. Greeley, editor of the influential paper, the New York Tribune, and a supporter of abolition, had just addressed an editorial to Lincoln on the 19th called The Prayer of 20 Millions, making demands and implying that Lincoln's administration lacked direction and resolve, especially on the issue of slavery.
Things aren't going particularly well for our man Lincoln. And now Greeley has publicly called him out. Like, what's going on with this?
Right, but let's not think of Lincoln's letter as just being an angry response to a critic.
No, not at all. Lincoln was too good a politician to let a newspaper editorial get under his skin, even from a powerful guy like Greeley, who, by the way, was actually a supporter of Lincoln. In fact, Lincoln begins his letter saying that he's not going to challenge anything Greeley has said or even take exception to the tone on Greeley's letter.
Instead, Lincoln says that he is glad to have a chance to respond to the supposed lack of direction and resolve. Listen to what Lincoln says here. As to the policy I seem to be pursuing, that's Lincoln's quotes, as you say, I have not meant to leave anyone in doubt. I would save the Union. I would save it the shortest way under the Constitution. The sooner the national authority can be restored, the nearer the Union will be, the Union as it was.
That's clear as day. It's about the Union. But the criticism was about Lincoln's position on slavery. So he wants to be just as clear in addressing that issue. Listen to this section of the letter. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and it is not either to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union. And clearly that's Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, and very repetitive, but it's with purpose. And he's not done just there. He goes on to say, quote, I shall do less whenever I shall believe what I am doing hurts the cause. And I shall do more whenever I shall believe doing more will help the cause. I shall try to correct errors when shown to be errors, and I shall adopt new views so fast as they shall appear to be true views. I here have stated my purpose according to my view of official duty, and I intend no modification of my oft expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free. So, what are we to take away from this letter, Zags?
Well, Lincoln wrote his reply to Greeley at a moment when a draft of the Emancipation Proclamation already lay in his desk drawer. The letter, which received widespread acclaim in the North, stands as a classic statement of Lincoln's constitutional responsibilities. Greeley would later write, after Lincoln's death, that the president had not truly responded to his editorial at all, but had instead used the moment as a platform to prepare the public for his altered position on emancipation. And, side note here, this was entirely in character for Lincoln. He was known for being remarkably methodical about his public statements, policy announcements, and even his private correspondence. One of his habits was writing what historians now call hot letters, sharp or emotional drafts he would pour his frustrations into, seal, and place in a desk drawer. Many of these were discovered after his assassination, with notes scrawled across them, never signed, never sent.
Hmm.
Lincoln understood the power of timing and tone, and he rarely released anything before it served a strategic purpose. His reply to Greeley fits this pattern, a carefully crafted public message delivered at exactly the moment he chose, while the truly monumental document, the Emancipation Proclamation, waited quietly in his drawer, prepared but deliberately withheld until the nation was ready.
And it's also important to note that his emphasis on preserving the Union and his responsibilities as president really put the Constitution front and center, right? That's the document he swore an oath to.
Mhm.
That's the government structure he's seeking to preserve.
Which is why our second document, the Gettysburg Address, became our America 250 tie-in.
Right. So let's set the stage for that, Zags. Could you provide the context for that famous speech?
Sure. Well, now we are in 1863, more than 2 years into the war. From July 1st through the 3rd, American or Union forces battled Confederate troops in what would become the bloodiest battle of the war and the largest battle ever fought in North America in terms of time, men, and munitions. After horrendous bloodshed, Union forces could claim victory, although Lincoln was crestfallen when General Meade failed to pursue Lee's badly damaged army, as Lincoln believed that the opportunity to capture Lee's army could have spelled the end to the Confederacy and the end of the war itself. Several months later, in November of 63, at a commemoration of Soldiers' National Cemetery, now known as Gettysburg National Cemetery, Lincoln delivered the famous speech.
And it's against that backdrop that we make this all important connection between Lincoln and the Declaration of Independence. In trying to make sense of the death and carnage of the Battle of Gettysburg and the war itself, Lincoln, the man who told Horace Greeley that his paramount object was to save the Union, reached back not to 1787 and the ratification of the
Right.
Constitution, but to 1776 and the Declaration of
I mean,
Independence.
that's our mission statement as a nation rather than a framework of government.
Absolutely. 77 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure.
So this war is testing us. It's testing whether this vision of a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to equality can survive.
Exactly. It's more than just a political union or a document like the Constitution that we're fighting for. We have, Lincoln believes, attempted to create something entirely new and good and honorable, a nation unlike any other. He goes on to say of those men who fought and died at the Battle of Gettysburg that their sacrifice was for us and for this noble experiment.
Mhm.
And now it's our turn to pick up the burden. Zags, would you read that section for us, that next section?
Sure. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the greatest task remaining before us. that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that they were here, highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain.
That cause. What does he mean by that cause, Zags?
The cause of liberty, the cause of self-government,
Right.
the notion that all men are created equal. It's just circling back to that initial thesis statement, if you will.
Right. And that's the 7
7
years
years
ago.
ago.
That's back to the Declaration.
Exactly. And Lincoln finishes by saying that we need to reboot, to go back to the starting blueprint, the Declaration, as the way to move forward.
Exactly. And finally, we know why we had to fight this terrible war, why these awful sacrifices had to be made. Because Lincoln says that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom,
Powerful stuff.
and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Lincoln is reminding his audience and us that we have always known what we are, because we've always had that Declaration of Independence as that beacon of hope.
And Lincoln wants us to look for that beacon in the darkness, the Civil War, to lead us to the light.
And I'm kind of reminded, Zags, of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Right? Not to make this any, to
Now, the Wizard of Oz does come up quite often.
it does, but I also don't want to make this seem,
Downplay it.
to downplay it. Remember what Glinda tells Dorothy when Dorothy asks to go home?
Yes, she tells Dorothy that she's had this power to bring herself home all along, that her slippers, silver in the book, but ruby in the movie, could always send her back and save her. So it was there all along.
And that's what Lincoln's saying. Now, more than ever, we have to look back at that declaration. It's our pair of ruby slippers. If we follow it, it will always bring us home. And that's ultimately what this war was fought for, he's saying.
Yes, and it was Lincoln who elevated the Declaration to be that core national document. As Gary Wills wrote in his Pulitzer Prize-winning work, Lincoln at Gettysburg, quote, he not only put the Declaration in a new light as a matter of founding law, but put its central proposition, equality, in a newly favored position as a principle of the Constitution.
Jefferson and the Declaration Committee wrote it and edited it. The Continental Congress adopted it. But Lincoln is the one who animated the Declaration in the minds of the American people and made it, as you said before, our national mission statement.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. We're so glad we could kick off the America 250 celebration. Remember to check the show notes for just a few of the great resources that are available in the run-up to this year-long celebration.
And as always, don't forget to check out all the other great videos, content spotlights, 8 Push on the Road segments, and fascinating podcasts like this one that are available on this YouTube channel. We'll see you next time. Underground Army, dismissed.
That shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment.